Welcome to the University of Manchester's Economists Talking About series. In this episode, we will be interviewing Dr. Lisha Agarwal, who completed her PhD in Italy and is now a tutor for the BSc, BA, and other courses at the University of Manchester. To begin, Dr. Agarwal, could you please tell us a little more about yourself?
Hello, Arshi. Thank you for that introduction. So, to add on to the formal titles that you have already given me, in my current role as a teaching associate at the university, I usually conduct small group teaching in a courses that range from first year to all the way to the third year. In addition to that, I'm also an academic advisor to undergraduate students, and I also supervise master thesis dissertations in economics at the university. In terms of research, my research is primarily in the field of applied microeconomics with a focus on education and health economics. So I'm very fascinated to learn how human capital accumulation affects outcomes and how these outcomes are driven by different mechanisms. Anybody interested in my research can find those on my website on Google.
Right, thank you so much. So, I understand that you've done research and work in Italy and the UK, and you've studied previously in India. So, what do you think are the major academic differences between these countries?
So, I've been very lucky to have gone through my educational journey in different parts of the world. It's obvious that educational institutions are very different in these different parts of the world, and as such, policies and requirements for overall teaching, as well as assessment and feedback criteria, is very different in these countries. Having said that, my major difference that I experienced was how resources were utilized in these institutions. For example, in the UK, a lot of contact hours are provided not only with the lecturers but also with tutors and other members of the staff, maybe in the form of tutorials or in the form of office hours. These opportunities are kind of more limited when it comes to countries like India or even a lot of educational institutions in Europe. And I think this is something that the East can learn from the West, where more resources can be provided to students, especially at the undergraduate level.
Right, thank you. And what kind of motivated you to do a postgraduate degree and then go on to do a PhD?
So the 3 years in undergraduate economics teaches you a lot and introduces you to microeconomic theories and principles. However, there is this opportunity to delve deeper into niche areas or even specialize in areas of economics that interest you. And the postgraduate degree actually provides exactly that to you. So my interest basically to pursue a postgraduate degree stemmed from the fact that I wanted to learn a little bit about the specific areas of economics. Also, the dissertation track in the postgraduate degree, of course, helps a lot if you want to pursue a career in academia, which I wanted to do. So, building on that, that's what motivated me to go on and satisfy my curiosity related to research and gaining expertise in the field of economics, which is why I did a PhD. So, basically, the motivation stems from your curiosity and your passion to understand better how economics can be used in day to day life.
Right. And how were you able to kind of choose a specialization in applied microeconomics?
So basically, I got introduced to the field of economics of education in my master's thesis. This was during when I was doing my literature review, my very first literature review during my master's for my thesis. And I was very fascinated by how individuals decide on the level of education they want to gain. And these affect outcomes not only for the individual themselves, but for the society as a whole. So it basically, I was very curious to understand what drove these mechanisms. Why did people choose to go to study particular degrees, and was it beneficial as a society for the majority of the people to do STEM versus non-STEM degrees? And that's basically my introduction to education economics. And then during my PhD, I went on to learn techniques in causal inference, which just rest is history, let's say. And that's how I got introduced to microeconometrics, and we went on and did few little things in education and health.
Right. And understanding that you've done a lot of research and you're currently a tutor for so many different courses and years, how do you think these two supplement each other?
Oh, there is a very good connection actually between research and education. So at the university, this is how, university differs from college in the UK. So because you, as a professor, I not only teach the students, but I also conduct evidence-based research, which keeps me up to date with what is happening in the field. So this informs a lot of my teaching. I can give real life examples to students of the theory that they saw, or even assumptions, a lot of assumptions that we make in economics while building a model. What happens if those assumptions fall away in real life? And there is evidence to back all of those. So you have a varied array of fields where you can take up research and you can implement it in your teaching so that students have a real life feel of what they are learning in the classroom, which I think is what is fascinating about economics because you see it in practice almost every day in your life.
Right. And I understand that previously you worked in both the public and the private sector before you started teaching. So what would you say are the main differences in work culture and experience between these two?
So yeah, just to give a little bit of a background, I worked as a data scientist for a year in the private sector before I went on to do my PhD and then start my academic career. So there are a lot of pros and cons for both the academic career and the private sector. I think for the private sector, one of the things is that your output determines a lot of what models and techniques you use in the field. However, in academia, there is a lot of scope for experimentation. So there's a lot of trial and error. And as we just discussed, there's a constant update of the syllabus that you're imparting or knowledge that you're imparting to students based on the kind of research that is being done in the field. So there is a constant update here. So there is more challenge, I could say, in the academia in terms of diversity. Also, in terms of your role, they are not very well defined in academia. So you have a lot of opportunity to undertake very various different projects, which require various different skills and give you experiences in a lot of different fields. Having said that, I would say one something that you might take as a pinch with a pinch of salt in academia, especially, is that the funding opportunities are not as varied and as readily available. So a lot, almost all academics would tell you that the constant application that they have to do for funds and grants and fellowship for, in some cases, even annually, is something that takes away a lot of time from research and teaching overall. Whereas job security is, let's say, more stable in the private sector.
Right. And being so prominent in the research field, could you tell us more about maybe one of your favorite research papers?
Wow, there are so many. Okay, if this because this is an interview that I think is catered toward university students, I would like to mention this paper, one of the papers that I during my postgrad really was fascinated by. This is a paper by Joshua Angrist, who was the 2021 Nobel Prize winner, and A.B. Kruger. The paper is called "Does Compulsory Schooling Affect Schooling and Outcomes?" So this is one of the papers that uses causal inference techniques to see how compulsory education has an effect on outcomes. And it's a very fascinating paper for anybody who wants to understand the causality between education and how compulsory education may or may not lead to better outcomes. So I think anybody who's interested should give it a read. It is a 1991 paper which was published in the Quarterly Journal of Economics.
Right. And could you also tell us a little more about one of the papers that you've written?
Yeah, so one of the papers again majorly is was focused on education. So this is a paper called "The Pathways to College," which I've co-authored with Giorgio Brunello and Lorenzo Rocco from the University of Padua in Italy. You can find this paper in the 2021 edition of the Journal of Human Resources. So this paper basically talks about the different educational pathways that are taken by students in their journey from high school all the way to tertiary education or university. And what we try to see in that paper is does your choice of high school matter in the long run? So basically, what I mean is if you want to go on and do an academic job at the end, so would it matter if you did an academic high school or you did more vocational courses at high school? And we do find a difference. We find that skill set differences at university are not always teased out by just doing the same course at university. So students who do take different courses at high school end up with different outcomes.
Right, that's interesting. So just to sum up at the end, do you have any advice for students who are at university now, in terms of how they can make the most out of their degree?
Yes, certainly. As usual, I would say university provides a lot of resources to students, be it in terms of tutorial hours or peer-to-peer teaching or just student organizations. My advice to students is take full use of these resources and please ask for help if you find any facet of university life difficult. This is one of the things that I think students shy away from. They do not fully utilize the contact hours that are provided to them. However, there is so much research that every student who utilizes the resources given to them not only increases their overall GPA, but are also more likely to graduate. And I think, given this post COVID era for university students where they have just come back from a virtual world and there is more in person teaching, I would I would urge students to, put yourself out there. Don't be afraid of asking for help. Ask for help if you are suffering at any point in life. And I'm sure that you will get the support that you need.
Right. Thank you so much for your time and your insight, Dr. Agarwal. Remember to come
Thank you
back
so
next
much.
time for our next interview with another exciting economist.
Thank you, Arushi. That was amazing.